Did that track have a totally different tempo for you, or is that just me?
No, it worked.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
And we are live. All right. It is November 14, 2025. Welcome to Borderlines Podcast, a Canadian immigration podcast. Before I forget, please like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Today's episode topic is a hotly requested one. Several people have asked when Deanna and I are going to talk about the 2026 to 2028 immigration levels plan, and we are today. We actually had a different topic in mind for today, which was somebody who's involved in the private extraction of refugees from different countries. That's been pushed back. So for those who are expecting that today, it is going to happen. Also, as an upcoming episode, Deanna recently spoke to the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration about Bill C-12, and there will be an episode on that coming up as well.
But and hopefully we'll get in front of SECU before the time we talk about it. We're actively soliciting an invite to appear before that committee. That's the
SECU is an amazing acronym, so you're probably going to have to elaborate on what that means.
The committee, the Standing Committee for Public Safety.
Yeah.
And so, the bill is now being rushed from SIM to SECU because it was a public safety bill. They are the ones that ultimately manage that piece of legislation. So it's going to them for their final meetings on the study and then for clause by clause. And I understand that's supposed to happen within the next week or two. And again, hopefully we'll be invited back to the CBA is what I mean by we will be invited back to actually speak there before it goes into clause by clause. And we have prepared yet another brief. Anyways, we just don't know if we're going to be invited yet. So everything is super, super compressed timelines. But anyways, we will talk about this in a different episode.
There was, I think you're speaking or did speak to the CBABC in a panel called Winter is Coming, Bill C-12. And I joked that makes you Arya Stark. And I had to just say you had no idea what the reference was. The Game of Thrones reference went completely over your head. Too much immigration, not enough HBO.
Yeah, definitely.
So the levels plan was released. Let's dive into it. And there were several things to note. The first big thing and the big change this year was that it was done at the same time as the budget. Normally, of course, the budget is presented in the spring. This year it was pushed to the fall. And for the first time, I'm still not really clear on why they chose to do this, but they combined the release of the immigration plan with the budget. Some have speculated. Some have speculated,
that human capital, right?
Yeah, that it ties into economics, housing, things like that. Some in the media, and I have no comment on this one way or the other, and I would have no knowledge on this one way or the other, was it's because Althea Raj on CBC's That Issue is sort of hinting that they wanted other ministers in addition to the minister to be speaking about the levels plan. Again, I have no idea how much there is to that or any accuracy to it.
I love Althea Raj, and I think anything she says, I give high stock to. That makes sense, and also I don't think it's an accident that this is exactly at the same time that the C-12 hearings are going forward. I think everything is very tied into this kind of austerity budget. I mean, is it an austerity budget? Is it not an austerity budget? But it's all about this kind of narrative that too much, too many, cut. And so, sort of speaking to the public desire to make cost of living lower. And that means the anti-immigration narrative. So it does entail there.
So the first thing to know about the actual numbers, and for those watching on YouTube, I've thrown a Financial Post article up on the screen, and I've been putting a lot of thought into what I'm about to discuss, which is that the way that the levels plan was presented in the budget was that there was an initial plan that we're used to seeing with a top line number and a breakdown of all programs. And on the same page of the budget, right below that, it talked about an additional 2 programs.
Yeah.
One for asylum claimants who are successful inside Canada, one for temporary residents inside Canada as well. And on the
Very
day that
confusing.
the budget, it is. So the day that the budget came out, I was looking at the numbers and thinking the math's not mathing.
Yeah.
And some consultants on Twitter were saying, I wonder if it's just on top. And if the plan is inaccurate, I said, well, that can't be. I don't think that there would be something that misleading.
Yeah.
And then the next day,
Sure enough.
I was speaking with the reporter from this article, who wrote this article, and he was saying that there was going to be a technical briefing on the levels plan. And so I asked, why is there a top line number of 380,000 new permanent residents in the levels plan, and then mention of up to an additional 140,000 people over 2 years? Jumping ahead a bit, we'll get to these numbers. But for the overall concept, I said, can you ask IRCC what's this about? And apparently the answer, as is stated in the article from IRCC, was that the 140,000 people are on top of the plan. So the answer to the question was, why aren't they in the plan? And the answer was, it's on top of the plan, which is a very weird way of doing it. Different people have had different perspectives on what it might be. I'm quoted in this article as saying, I think that, my quote in the article was, I can't figure out why they aren't in the plan if the plan is meant to be accurate, said Stephen Murins, an immigration lawyer and partner at Larley Rosenberg. It completely changes the overall number. Yeah. And then a bunch of people on Twitter who are retweeting the article were basically like, if Steve Murins doesn't get why they're doing it, then Steve Murins is an idiot. I get the, and I understand, that's what I would say about people who I think that, it was designed to get the top line stories of saying that immigration is coming down, or there was a shift to economics. That's one possibility. The other possibility, and here's what I want to run by you, and what I was just thinking about this morning, is that what we could be looking at is a new way that the levels plans are done completely. And so what I mean by that is, we've talked before about how the immigration levels plan is always a bit confusing because it includes people who are transitioning from temporary resident status to permanent resident status, and those people are already here. And so when people say 500,000 new immigrants, say under the Trudeau era, where are these people going to live? Well, a bunch of them are already living here. Yeah. And the Carney government, with these 2 additional programs, seems to be trying to present this as these are people who are already in Canada. I think for both statements in the budget, these are people who are in Canada already, and so they are needed to continue to stay. So I've just pulled open the budget, and it's Budget 2025 proposes a one-time initiative to recognize eligible protected persons in Canada as permanent residents. And then for the temporary resident to permanent resident announcement, it is, quote, these workers have established roots in their communities, are paying taxes, and are helping to build the strong economy Canada needs. So one way of looking at this, and it's similar in the way that when it comes to the budget deficit, the Carney government is trying to distinguish between operating expenses and capital expenses, is a part of me wonders if this is, the first hint of a new way of doing these plans, where they will distinguish between those who are arriving in Canada as new permanent residents and those who are just transitioning from temporary to permanent. I've commented before that I don't think it makes sense to include temporary resident to permanent resident in these plans. It's not even clear to me that there should be a cap on the number of people each year who can transition from temporary to permanent. I wonder if that may be something that we see going forward, and this could be the first hint. To be clear, the plan that does have, and we'll get into the numbers, the plan that has the 380,000 top line does include people who are already here.
Mm-hmm.
But to the general public, it wouldn't necessarily look that way.
Totally.
And so I just wonder if this is the hint that we could be seeing much bigger levels from people who are transitioning from temporary to permanent, and possibly counting things differently going forward.
I mean, first of all, I want to go back to the, like, if Stephen Meurens doesn't understand this, Stephen Meurens is an idiot. I would say if Stephen Meurens doesn't understand this, it's because it's deliberately obtuse. You know, it's like, this doesn't actually, like, if you're looking at a levels plan and you think you're going to be seeing there who's going to be granted permanent residence, that's what everyone is looking to this levels plan for. And the fact that you have to do A does not mean that this is the number. It means A plus B plus C. You have to read the entire thing. It's just, you know, it's not, it doesn't feel transparent. And I think that this lack of transparency is something that we're experiencing, not just in the budget, not just in the levels plan, but in overall. This is something we've argued about with C12, about omnibus legislation, that you need like a team of experts to pull apart 140 pages of legislation to figure out what is actually intended by it. It's just not straightforward. Like, again, you might be able to figure it out, but it was like weeks or a week of like people back and forth saying, what does this mean? Even people that are like, that live, speak, and breathe this stuff, to be like, oh, no, this is a different group. And when you're saying, like as Steve says, it's the number, the 380,000, plus this 33, plus this 150, and the 33,000 being the in Canada people going from temporary to permanent residence, even though there's a different group of people going from temporary to permanent residence already embedded in the 380,000, and then the refugees that are being resettled. Like, again, it's just a bit mind-bending, and it doesn't read clearly. Now, on the one,
and I would say that like most of the media still hasn't picked up on this. Like, nope. The amount of articles that talk about how immigration is decreasing to 380,000, which is wrong. The number of articles talking about how there's a shift to an economic focus, which is wrong. Yeah. Even lawyers and consultants on LinkedIn, who I don't think have done the deep dive, are parroting those two facts or facts, and they're wrong.
Yeah, and saying like, oh my God, only 33,000 are going to transition over. No, like, and people assuming that this means there's going to be a new TR to PR, like maybe, but again, like this leaves more questions than it does answers, which to me is sort of like, if the objective of the levels plan and the budget is supposed to be adding clarity, I don't think it accomplished that. Now, I would like to be generous. I think, Steve, you're generally more generous when it comes to like, what are the public policy makers thinking? What is the rationale behind it? So I'm going to do my effort to be generous. And I would say with respect to the 115,000 refugees who are going to transition to permanent residency, I would like to hope that one of the motivations is that the government knows that that is going to be seen cynically. A lot of people don't wish to see more refugees. What is lost in that, however, is that this is not a new group of refugees. This is people who have already been found to be refugees. Like, they have already had positive claims decided. But the question is whether or not they're going to be able to become permanent residents. So once you've won your claim, you've been found to be a convention refugee, you've been found to be a person in need of protection, but that status is just like, they can't remove you, but you don't have any status other than this, you know, you can't be removed. And so what they're talking about is finally allowing this huge cohort of people to regularize their status as permanent residents. So it's not like, hey, you know, we're going to grant whole new permanent status to people. It's just that we're going to give them, we're going to legitimate their status in Canada and allow them to become whole.
No, I think a lot of people are confusing asylum claimants and approved people.
So being generous, they're trying to like not put that forward and stoke more kind of anti-refugee rhetoric. At the same time, they could have done that by explaining these are people who've already been found to be deserving of protection, whom we've left in limbo for years and years and years.
Yeah. I mean, the cynic's approach would be, with the addition of these permanent residents coming through the new one-time initiatives, as they're called, you get back to Trudeau era levels of close to 500,000, and they wanted. So one take would be that they wanted to avoid the headlines of Carney government
100%.
returns to Trudeau era levels, even though that's not actually really that accurate because it doesn't. The temporary numbers, which we'll get to, are way down. Another thing before we get into the numbers, and it's interesting if you read a lot into what people are saying as a sign of where immigration may go is, and unfortunately it's a video here and I'm not tech savvy enough to play a video. The finance minister, in one of the more repeated quotes, and again, not the immigration minister for whatever reason, but the finance minister was talking about how when it comes to the initiative for transitioning temporary resident to permanent, that someone who, quote, has been in Canada for 4 to 5 years isn't really a temporary resident. They're here permanently, and so we should be letting them remain permanently. We can ignore that legally that might not be correct and kind of throws a wrench into assessing whether someone's actually should get a work permit for 4 to 5 years and the whole test of temporary resident versus permanent. But the fact that you have one of the most senior ministers saying that someone who has been here for 4 to 5 years deserves to stay permanent is a bit of a paradigm shift from what we've been hearing basically up until the budget about how people who are here temporary are really just temporary and they know they're temporary. This is a shift from the finance minister.
It's a shift, but again, it's not borne out. Like, I mean, even going back to the situation of the refugees who have been accepted, who can't be removed, who are now going to become permanent residents, their family members are still waiting, 10 years to be reunited. Like, again, I think that there's a lot of mixed messaging that's going on. And I feel like we've kind of lost the plot in terms of what the public discourse is supposed to be. Like, there's no unified position. The fact that finance minister is speaking about immigration doesn't surprise me because it's become more of a finance issue rather than a public policy, like a human integration.
I mean, what is sort of interesting as well is with these one-time initiatives, once we enter a world where there's a plan, and then there's one-time initiatives on top of the plan, anything's possible, right?
Nothing means
this
anything.
Has sort of been, my comment, I think, to our Signal group was once they did this, I went, okay, before I was pretty certain that they would be canceling certain categories, and we'll get to the categories in the numbers, they could just do a one-time initiative and go the other way. So there's a lot of uncertainty now, but I think if you're an applicant, and you're a temporary resident, especially waiting. I know we have one person listening on YouTube who just posted that they've been in Canada for 8 years and they don't have PR. There's at least a tonal shift in the government that may change. Whether it does, I don't know. But that tonal shift to me has been very noticeable from, that you're a temporary resident, you knew you'd be temporary and we need you to leave, to, oh, if you've been here 4 to 5 years, you should be able to stay permanent. So we'll see how this all plays out.
Yeah. The other thing I want to say, though, about not just what's there, but what's not there, is when you look at the temporary residence numbers, where they've talked about these caps, clear caps for temporary residents. But they've also spoken about, when they named the numbers for temporary residents, they were very clear that this does not include extensions. And to me, that's a bit also quite mind-bending, because for people that are already here, okay, so take that. And then also, one of the things that's front and center in the budget and in the levels plan is, not in the budget, in the levels plan, is a very clear intent to reduce the overall population of temporary residents from 6.5% of the newcomer population to 5% in a year. But again, it's very hard to understand how that plan is supposed to come to fruition when we don't have any sense of what the intention is with respect to extensions. So people that are trying to look to this levels plan for some kind of transparency as to what does this mean for me? Am I going to be forced to leave? Am I going to be forced to, am I going to be able to extend my status? Are there going to be permanent options for me down the road? For all of the reasons that we've spoken about, those answers are not in any way apparent through this levels plan. It's just more kind of obfuscation because they've absented extensions. Like, I would love to see how many people are currently here on temporary residence with temporary resident status, and what do they expect? Are they capping the levels of extensions? Because I mean, I think practitioners and people are seeing a higher rate of refusal, but like, to understand what their mandate is, I think that is conspicuously missing from this plan.
Yeah, well, they also don't count visitors,
right?
Subhumans who don't work or study. They only count workers and students in their admissions. I still think they're just going to broaden business visitor categories. The other thing to note, though, and when you were talking about extensions, is the whole plan is predicated on the idea of people leaving in order to get to that 5% target. And we've talked before about how basically for each person who doesn't leave, there's one less person who they can admit. And I think where we saw this over the past year and could partially explain the huge refusal rate for students was the target for students. They're, I think, less than half of, they're like, in 2025, the amount of people being admitted as students was going to be about half what the target was, which may just be a correlation and not causation, but that was kind of necessary to get to 5%, given how few people are actually leaving.
Yeah.
Well, if you go on Reddit, there's a lot of frustrated people who say they're leaving.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm sure 70% of them are real people and 30% are bots. But like, it's, I think it's all starting to bear fruit. Let's get to the actual numbers. So, bear in mind, again, we can finish the discussion on temporary. So temporary, again, for the first time in 2025 was capped. And it's supposed to be in 2026, 230,000 new temporary workers, 170,000 through the International Mobility Program. That's spouses of students, postgraduate work permit holders, although I think they might be explicitly excluded. NAFTA, Working Holiday Program, I guess NAFTA is now called CUSMA, charitable work permits, things like that. Temporary Foreign Worker Program, those are the LMIAs, the Labor Market Impact Assessments. That's way down. Part of one thing to sort of note about how that is kept down, at least now, is you're not allowed to get a low-wage LMIA in an area of the country where the unemployment rate is more than 6%, which right now is most of the country. And I don't want to read into these numbers, but these numbers sort of assume either that they're going to lower that unemployment percentage, or that the government is forecasting that the unemployment rate is going to remain high. And I mean, we're not going to talk about the budget as a whole, but like, the budget didn't present the most rosy picture of Canada's economy right now. So we'll see with that. And then students, again, it's a big cut in about half of what previous targets were. But as we've talked about on the podcast, and as our former guest, who we really should have back on, Lisa Brenner, had a great LinkedIn post about how if they actually hit 155,000 students, that would be an increase over what we saw in 2025, notwithstanding that the target was higher.
Say that again.
So the target for 2020, the 2025 target for students was around 300,000.
Right.
But they're nowhere near hitting it.
Right.
We'll be lucky to
hit
hit 155,000 this year.
Right.
So even though, again, there's a headline for the news about how the target for students is being cut, that's reflecting the reality on the ground.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Permanent residents.
Again, I do think that all of the, what's, I'm sort of interested in expanding it to what's happening at the federal court with respect to study permit refusals, and just the quality of the decision making coming out of the visa offices, and even, with extension applications. I don't even know how to kind of squeak that in there, but ultimately practitioners have been extremely aware of the very poor quality of decisions that we're seeing, and the kind of access to justice issues arising from the fact that no matter how bad the decisions are, not everybody's going to be able to afford to take the case to judicial review. We had that wonderful study permit pilot, which is now sunset. You know, I just really hope that that comes back. So at least, you know, I would just love to see the court more engaged in why is it that there's such a clear reduction in the number of approvals when none of the rules have really changed substantively, you know, like, you know, like, again, it's not that I'm saying that the rule should be higher, but it's just that, like, clearly a different standard is being applied. Like, there are these rule of law questions that I think are important because it's more than just like managing the numbers. You can do that through a quota and say you stop accepting at a certain number. But the fact that the same rules lead to different results kind of challenges the integrity of the system as a whole because, you know.
Yeah, I mean, in the years ahead, as people retire, there's leaks. It will be interesting to hear what went on behind the scenes in terms of the taps on the shoulder of, hey, we need you to refuse more.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
adjustments to the algorithm on what would be refused.
And I just keep saying that, like, I know I've been like super rabid about this, but as soon as you start delegating these things to ministerial instructions, to algorithms and stuff like that, you start to lose the plot. And that's why the law is important.
Yep, permanent residence. Top line 380, although as we discussed, that number is a bit misleading because it doesn't include what's on top of it. Now, I've also kind of stopped, you know, a lot of people did deep dives into what it's going to go from 2026 to 2027, 2027 to 2028. To me, you know, I'm reasonably confident that 2026 will be met, plus whatever new one-time initiatives they do. I get less confident in forecasts 2027 to 2028. What I will say is interesting is Francophone target. Yeah. We're supposed to be 9.5% this year. It's been reduced to 9%, a reduction both in the absolute number and the percentage. Then for 2027, it was been reduced to 9.5%. They try to bring it back and say in 2028, it's 10.5%. But I always think that what a government is doing in the immediate short term is indicative of their intentions. And you can kind of ignore lofty goals. It's kind of like how the budget balances itself always in the long run. And in the short run, it's, you know, the deficit increases. Here, the Francophone target decreasing for 2026. And that doesn't even include the one-off addition, unless the TR to PR has a huge Francophone component, but I don't think it will, because anyone who's a skilled immigrant who is Francophone in Canada would already qualify for express entry.
Right.
So the TR to PR, if it is going to transition, unless they lower the requirement for what counts as Francophone for that program, or they invite unskilled people, which they haven't, I don't see how the TRPR that they are planning will have a big Francophone component. I am going to go out on a limb and say that it's the first signs that they are abandoning or reducing their Francophone target, because it will be way less than 9% this year unless they only give refugee or the protected persons who are Francophone, it's going to be less than 9% this year.
Right. Just because of where they're trending at this point.
Yeah. Just because you add on, like, it's 9% of 380, but as we discussed, there's another like 140 over 2 years on top. Right. So I don't know. I think that they are, it's the first hints that they may be walking back their Francophone targets.
And again, I have to put in the proviso, neither Steve nor I are against the idea of increasing Francophone populations outside of Canada. It's just about, you know, meeting a baseline. Sorry.
They can do whatever they want outside of Canada.
Outside of Quebec, it's just a matter of whether or not this is the appropriate mechanism by which to do
that. Yeah. The other things just to note, so within here, federal high skilled, what they did this year is they're not distinguishing between category draws and CEC for whatever reason. It's all 109,000. Yeah. Federal business is dropped to around 500. That includes the SUV and the startup business class. these two categories with this reduction have 30 to 50 year waits.
Yeah.
That's where the
It kind of
rumors
makes a
are.
mockery of those entire streams. Like,
Well, yeah, come start a business in 30 years.
yeah.
That's where the rumors of Bill C-12 cancellations, although the department strenuously denies it, or an initiative. I don't know if you came out of your hearings at SIM with any insight as to whether C-12 will be used there.
Well, I mean, what we got was, I only intend to use C-12 for situations of war, pandemic, and mass fraud. Mass fraud to me is the big, you know, what do we mean? And so I think there's little hesitation in calling the influx in refugee claims bogus claims, in spite of the fact that like the number of internally displaced people across the world has grown. And so, but I think that this is another one of those areas that I think could be painted with the same brush. SUV claims are bogus. And so, again, that's kind of why we
I don't know. I watched her appear before SIM, the minister, and there was a Liberal MP, Samir something, his last name's escaping me.
Zubari.
Yeah, he's actually pretty impressive. I like that. The first time I heard him ask a question, I had to look up whether he was a Liberal MP or opposition.
No, for sure. He was the one that was making challenging questions. And I think it's because he is very actively trying, like, I think that there's some recognition that there are vulnerabilities in the bill, but trying to figure out, like, I'm backing the minister, but at the same time, I understand we might need to make certain concessions. And what are
those were very usually the when the government MPs ask questions, it's like, when did you start becoming so awesome?
Yeah, exactly.
His questions were not like that at all.
They were not like
but
that.
Anyway,
he
so
actually, I know, spoke to Carl and was like, where do you see the vulnerabilities? How can you, how might we mitigate some of these risks? So
well, he asked the minister, do you plan on canceling whole application categories?
For sure.
And she went, no. And then I thought that would be the end of it. But then she said, I want to be really clear. We are not canceling asylum claims. And then I sat back and went, well, now I have no idea what that means vis-a-vis other categories.
Yeah.
Federal economic
person next to her was like, those aren't applications.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a bunch: agri-food, community immigration pilot, Atlantic immigration is 4. The big one.
You forgot caregivers.
Caregivers, they're in there.
They're in there. I know, but it's like, it's a pretty small pool for a pretty big group of projects.
The big thing this year is the return of the Provincial Nominee program. 91,500. They had halved this in 2025, and now it's back.
Was it really half? Like, what was it?
Yeah, the provincial targets went down 60% with no notice to the provinces.
No, that was insane.
Many provincial nominee programs were essentially closed this year. The big thing that I think applicants will feel next year compared to this year, the foreign workers inside Canada, is the return of the provincial nominee program.
Yeah.
Will be very good.
Yeah, for sure. And just seeing what each province decides to do with their allocation will be like, I think we're all waiting with bated breath to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
And at least hopefully they'll have some time now, because before it was like most of those programs just paused. Even BC and Ontario paused for months because they had to completely rethink.
Well, and then there was this weird jockeying where it was like, oh, you're taking some refugees, you get a slight increase. And it was a very weird.
And even at the end of the year, they threw them another few spots.
Well, you had Daniel Smith in Alberta was, complaining loudly. Doug Ford was talking about just issuing work permits and spots. So I think the provinces were annoyed enough that they got their quota back.
Yeah.
Spouses and partners, 70,000. Parents and grandparents is down to 15.
Yeah. And who knows if that represents backlog cases? Like, will there be another draw? What do you think, Steve? I don't have any finger on
they could. I don't like. I could see
go back to the 2020
draw, finish the 2020 round. There's what they call wastage. Like, I think they're at 40 to 50% of people getting invitations aren't applying. This is the one that I find really just bizarre. So the target is 20,000 protected persons in Canada and dependents abroad. But of course, you have to add up to 110,000 to that over 2 years. So again, it's just weird the way the plan was presented, because in the plan, there's 20,000. And then on top of the plan, there's a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Privately sponsored, 16.
But also, again, resettled refugees, like they've closed the privately sponsored refugees. Those programs have been closed now for the better part of a year. Does this mean they're reopening, or are there still backlogged cases that they're going to just work at that inventory?
No idea.
I don't know. I think that the closure of those programs is really challenging, especially because those people being resettled are like in the midst of a conflict zone or somewhere like in a third country, but in a place where they have no tenable solution and they have financial backing from their sponsors. So, it seemed like a good program to prioritize, but yeah. Anyways, I don't know if it's coming back.
Yeah.
I would love to see
H&C 1,100. So there's that 50-year backlog. Again, not clear what will happen there, other than I don't believe that a 50-year backlog will continue. They'll either special initiative it and just announce that they're going to clear that backlog through processing. And the other side is they may cancel it through Bill C-12. No one really knows. It is interesting this year for the first time that they're breaking H&C out from the other category, which is like the Hong Kong program, the Ukraine program, the Latin American program, all their little public policy programs. Sudan.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know. Isn't that in the number 11 and other is just general? Like, I don't really know how they've broken
No,
it.
other is the public, so other is, like the country specific, Ukraine, Sudan, Hong Kong. Wouldn't surprise me if they add Iran just because.
So that insane number for agencies, like honestly, and this is with them publishing on their processing timelines page that there are currently 50,000 applications sitting waiting for a decision.
Well, that's the minister's transition binder, which credit to us, we basically broke that story of the 50-year timeline that's now everywhere.
Good job. Yeah.
Good job to
no,
us.
it's really awful. News. Yeah, breaking bad news. It seems to be our new brand.
Yeah. The other thing to add on just from the budget that's not in the plan, and it's not part of the plan, but it will impact the plan, are the cuts. So as part of the budget this year, IRCC had to publish, or all the departments, I think, had to publish what they plan on cutting. And so IRCC's, as I click to it, one of the things that they are cutting, let me just see if I can find this, is there's a change to the interim federal health program where there's a change to the interim federal health program where there'll now be co-payments. So that's the healthcare that refugees receive. There's going to be some sort of a co-payment system. Not that many details provided. They are combining like IRCC is no longer going to be doing employer compliance inspections. That's going to be done by Service Canada.
Okay.
There's going to be some limit on the ability of economic immigrants to access settlement programs. Don't know much about that. But then the big one is big cuts. IRCC will streamline its internal services using technology to improve productivity, reduce the number of external consultants, invest in internal capacity, and reevaluate human resource requirements, including management layers, with savings of tens of millions of dollars in HR cuts. From what I understand in some media reports, the way cuts are being done is that they are trying to get people to retire early with full pensions. So the plan for the cuts is to lose the most experienced people.
That's
so
amazing.
What that means for decision-making quality, we will see.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those, again, this like makes me lose my mind because I think the idea that immigration selection works better with an algorithm than it does with a human, I think that this is the untold story. And I think you've been kind of plugging away at this, Steve, in your LinkedIn, like who is not being chosen by our algorithm, the guy who's the head of an entire department at Western University who's not getting an invite. I keep talking about my climate change PhD holder who got his doctorate here in Canada, who's taking a time off from his postdoc fellowship to study French. Like, they're just absurd iterations. And the stuff that we talked about with Daniel Bernhard, yes, maybe you want to target young people because they have more years in the labor market, but do they have any intention of remaining in Canada beyond the next 5 years, And so I just feel like automation seems like a great gimmick, but whether or not it actually leads to better settlement outcomes, I think that remains to be seen. And the idea that this levels program gets revisited every year without any data-driven kind of analysis. I mean, this is what Dr. Simon Wallace, who's been a guest on our show, was talking about before SIM, and we were talking on C12, I just think there's just such a dearth of analysis about whether or not this is actually helping or breaking immigration. And I think the patchwork of programs we've seen and these swift pivots and are we happy right now with the quality of people that are being permitted to stay versus the ones we're saying, sorry, you have no pathway. Anyways, all of this, I could go on like crazy. The lack of settlement programs, again, it's kind of are we trying to set people up for success or failure? All that.
All right, we've got questions, and the first question kind of touches on something that we skipped. So the H-1B announcement. So also in the budget is an announcement that number one, the government is going to examine whether Canada's research ecosystems require support to retain talent, and whether there will be some sort of a program or points for researchers. And then the government also announced that there will be some sort of accelerated immigration pathway for H-1B visa holders. This seems to be in response to Donald Trump making the fee for H-1B visa holders in the United States $100,000 US. And so Carney seems to want to attract some of them. Will it be a direct path to PR program? If I had to guess, it would be under economic categories. As far as researchers, there's talk about what will the categories be in 2026. We did a podcast episode about the survey that IRCC did. And as far as new categories that may come in, there's one for senior managers who oversee the operations of an organization, was something they were asking about. That's the 00 NOCs. There's the highly experienced and specialized military personnel from allied countries who want to help Canada build its military. And there's the scientists and researchers. So I think for scientists and researchers, we're for sure going to get. The other two, I'm not sure. A lot of people complaining about the loss of arranged employment points. Well,
yeah, for sure. That to me is just like a no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of litigation and refusals around whether people are actually senior managers. The military one, I have a really hard time seeing it.
Super, me too.
I have no idea.
It's like we're going to entirely change our culture in order to suddenly become some military superpower by immigration. It's just I don't understand.
You don't think there's a shortage of that there's this big pent up demand of American Navy SEALs who want to immigrate to Canada and join the Army?
Honestly, it's just so wrongheaded in so many ways that it just I don't even know where to start.
And what do you think the odds are that we tell someone from China, Iran, or Russia and be like, hey, well, I guess they wouldn't be allied countries, but I don't see I don't see a big pent up demand for foreign soldiers who work in what are currently likely better funded militaries.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go to Canada and lead the, it's just an odd everything.
I'll tell you this, without giving an opinion on it, it would be interesting if the IDF was part of that. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, even just the decision as to whether or not that's an allied country right now would be so fraught.
Yeah. Vibe have Juke Collar with an amazing avatar asks or says, no hope for CEC with a little skull. I don't know. I wouldn't say there's no hope. I think it's going to be a bit of the return of CEC. Well, the TR to PR thing that they're, And people have commented, it actually is not a TRPR. It's just a transition of temporary residence to permanent. That could just be CEC, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
that could just be CEC for people who are here.
Yeah, targeted
I am
CEC
much
jobs.
more optimistic about 2026 than I was before this budget and these announcements.
Wowza, Steve. Yeah, I beg to differ, but I mean,
yeah, hybrid cyan, 5 years of study, 2.5 years as a PGP. My work permit's going to expire in 7 months.
yeah.
I happen to agree with the finance minister. I believe you're basically, I mean, I don't know if I would skip PR and go straight to citizenship, but as far as I'm concerned, you've been here 7.5 years. Assuming you came here and you've spent most of your adult life here. I kind of agree with the finance minister, which is there needs to be a paradigm shift into whether people like you are temporary or permanent. And I've said it before, but I don't think there should be a cap.
For sure. And I do think also, like, the proof is in the pudding when somebody's been here for 7.5 years. That shows like that this is their country of choice. I mean, that means something.
From 2000 and at least 2010 or 9 to 2014, 1 year of skilled work experience was enough to immigrate. There was no points ranking system. I don't believe the country was any worse off then than it is now. I'd be curious to see the stats on whether express entry actually has made a difference, this ranking system versus just people with skilled work experience. Anyway, that's a rant for another day.
Yeah, and my rant that I have to just repeat is that, like, if I were somebody outside of country looking to Canada as a potential destination, and I'm seeing the way that they are currently treating the people that have come here and invested 7 years, including tens of thousands of dollars in education, which was used to the benefit of domestic students, to help subsidize domestic programming, that would not appeal to me as a destination. So, like, the impact on Canada's international reputation, I think, is real. Yeah, and Canada should be like that. Like, anyways, I feel like what Canada has meant in the international community, I feel like we're pivoting there in a pretty major way.
And then the last question, unless any last minute ones come in. I see some people on Instagram saying that there was a skilled trades draw in Ontario. And Bikram Lahar says that they're breaking the immigration system for 500 plus candidates. I agree. I don't think that it needs to be that high. It wasn't that high before COVID. Before COVID, it even had come down to 415 points. But the question here is, are they waiting for the budget to be approved to conduct regular size CEC draws or any other links that we are missing to understand the plan and actual ITAs? If I had to guess, with CEC, part of the idea of express entry is that processing times are supposed to be 6 months or less. And right now they're 7 months. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're just slowing things down in the CEC as far as new ITAs go, because they want to get that processing time down to 6 months. It's speculation on my part, but I think it's reasonable speculation.
Isn't it also just because, like, I mean, the thing about, like, ITAs and landing and these numbers in general is not about, like, it's about in what year do you land the person, And so if we're approaching our quota for 2025, it's just about, like, you wait until the new year resets and then you're back to zero.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think they want the processing stat to come up. But again, we could be wrong. In a few months, we'll be doing our annual recap where we discuss everything we got wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, like, in January, we predicted what a Pierre Poilievre government would be for immigration. So our whole episode was on a wrong premise, but we'll come to that. We do have a last one that just dropped in. Go, Mafori.
Got an extra go in there.
Did I miss one? Can Canadian experience class work experience be combined across 3 or 4 tier 2 NOCs, or must there be one designated primary NOC? The CEC can be across multiple NOCs, multiple jobs. It gets a bit complicated when you're trying to have one job classified under multiple NOCs, especially in express entry where you have to declare your NOC. Although I would love to challenge that, but
it's super bizarre because primary NOC doesn't actually mean anything in the CEC.
Primary NOC, in the CEC doesn't mean anything. That's a federal skilled worker concept.
But in the CRS calculation,
it's one well, so there's two components to it. There's express entry as just one big questionnaire to capture federal skilled trades, which is basically dead, federal skilled worker, and CEC. The federal skilled worker program requires that you have 1 year of continuous work experience in what you declare your primary NOC to be. So that's where this whole primary NOC thing comes from. It's not really a thing in the CEC. What gets confusing, and again, what I think is ripe for challenge, is this notion that someone who qualifies for the CEC could, because they have 1 year of skilled work experience, which doesn't require a NOC to be declared, could still be refused in express entry because they wrote the wrong NOC. And then under the ministerial instructions, you're not supposed to get points. Although there's another part of the act which I think anyways gives officers some flexibility on this, but again, I'm not aware of any.
I just remember hearing about this. I think it was on the CELA listserv. Somebody said that they had a refusal on the basis that they found that the work experience didn't match the primary NOC designated, although there was really no question as to whether or not the work experience was in a NOC, like was in a tier 2 or tier 1 occupation.
So I mean, here's the
so what's happening.
Is for Canadian work experience. It says that in order to be assigned points under subsection 1, a foreign national must specify in their expression of interest the 5-digit NOC code that corresponds to each of the occupations they have engaged. And so that's where they have to specify it correctly. Even though the Canadian experience class doesn't require it, it's a points thing. What I have wondered, and again, I don't have any cases on this, I'm not aware of any cases, is the super confusingly worded and written. This is for people who are watching or listening, very, very lawyerly deep dive right now. But the subsection 11.2b of the Act, which says that despite subsection 1, which governs when express entry can be refused, an officer may issue the visa or document if, at the time the officer received the application, the foreign national did not have the qualifications they had at the time the invitation was issued and on the basis that they were ranked, but they did meet the criteria of the instruction. They meet the criteria for membership, and they were not lowerly ranked than other people. So I'm not aware of any cases that try to argue that if someone still qualifies for CEC and express entry, but for the wrong NOC declaration, they can still be granted a visa. But I'm curious because it seems ridiculous that our immigration system is predicated around accurately picking a NOC. When I would bet, it's insane. Let's just pull up software. Well, the classic one, are you a software developer and programmer or a software engineer? And then distinguishing, are you a computer network and web technician or a computer systems developer and programmer or a database analyst and data administrator or an information systems specialist or an information systems testing technician or a web designer or a web developer? So
exactly. Web designer versus
getting it wrong. It should not lead to I mean, we met with someone once who had come to us with a JR who had come to us with a refusal, and they had declared that they were senior management construction, and IRCC refused it on the basis that the person actually was senior management, not elsewhere classified. Therefore, they had chosen the wrong NOC. Therefore, it's
even crazier when they're on an LMIA-based work permit where Service Canada deemed that to be the correct NOC, or the PNP declared that to be the correct NOC. Again, this is just there's all sorts of litigation around. Because
if you stop and think about it, if you're working on a LMIA-based work permit and you're performing the duties in that you get the work permit under, and then at express entry, they're like, well, that's actually the wrong NOC. Service Canada and my colleague at the work permit station got it wrong. And does that mean all your work was unauthorized?
I know, seriously.
It creates.
So basically, go. The answer is as clear as mud.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's one of my favorites. Clear as mud.
Yeah.
All right. I think that is it. This was the episode people have been asking for, where we deep dive on the levels. And I don't know, I'm optimistic. I don't know if
Well,
I'm
that makes one
Subir
of us.
Kamal optimistic level, but I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I am my usual cynical self. Actually, I thought I was the idealist when we started this podcast, but who
It's
knows?
pivoted. I think when you can do stuff like say, here's our plan, and there's stuff on top of the plan that we're not planning for, even though we're announcing it ahead of time, you can do anything.
Yeah. This is like, I mean, this is as close to anarchy as I like to see.
There we go.